All right, back at it again. I decided it was time to do a drain and fill on the IS300 for the coolant. It's been a few years and quite a few miles. So here's what you're going to need. And some of this is overkill, so bear with me. But you can kind of do it your own way. It's just to kind of give you a basic idea how I do it. And it works out pretty well for me. I buy 4 distilled water gallons. I use a water wetter, which I'll get into that in a little bit. I buy the $34 Toyota Long Life red coolant from the Toyota dealership. Instead of buying the 50-50 mix for 20 bucks, I buy the $34 gallon real deal. It saves you money in the long run, so that's okay. You'll need a 32-ounce cup or a bottle of some type. This is just a cheap giveaway that I know holds 32 ounces. I'll get into that later. Some gloves and a large bucket. You also need to jack your car up. Make sure you use your jack stands and make sure the motor is cool. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to jack the car up, put in our drain bucket, and then we'll drain it. And we'll get back to you after that. Okay. So I like to jack up the car on the passenger side just because the petcock to drain the radiator is over on this side, on the driver's side. So the drain, feel around up there, is right about there. It's just a tiny little nozzle, and then on the back of that is a little twist valve. So we'll put our bucket in place. We'll reach back up behind there and turn the little plastic valve and let it drain out. Make sure your car is cool when doing it, because it's pretty hot. Alright, if you don't. Also, I didn't mention earlier, but we'll need some tape to mark the bucket. I wanted to show that butterfly valve. I don't know how well we can see that during the daytime. Let's see here. Well, can't really see it during the daytime, but it's right about there. Okay, I don't unscrew the valve all the way. I know some people do, it'll go faster if you do. But in my garage I don't like messes, so I just try to do it controlled. But as you can see, the old coolant is draining out. We have the radiator cap off on the top. And it's car hasn't been ran for a day, so it's cold. And we'll get all that drained out, and then we'll go from there. Technically, this radiator doesn't have a petcock, so it's alright. Alright, the old coolant is out, and it's in our bucket. And what I like to do is just take a piece of electric tape and go up over the top. That way, if you go through the side-to-side method, you have to kind of watch the tape and make sure that it doesn't fall down in or it slides off and messes up your measurement. So that's what I do. I just kind of go over the top, and then I know once the fluid gets to about here, then that's where we're going to be at. I'm going to go dispose of this properly. Check your local laws and regulations on disposal, but I'm going to do ours. I'm not going to film that piece. And then what we're going to do is this bucket, I'm actually going to get a measuring cup. That's 32 ounces to see how much water, without using my distilled water, just tap water, see how much fluid actually came out. It was full when I drained it, and then that way I know pretty much exactly how much I'll need to put back in. And then we'll have to do some math for the water wetter, and because we'll mix almost 50-50 with that, but since we're using the water wetter on the turbo car, just to keep a little cooler temp, we're going to do a 15%. So I'll get into that later. Okay, so we've emptied our old mix, and we're getting ready to basically run some distilled water through the system with the heater on high for about 10 minutes to kind of finish out the flush. What came out was 176 ounces, so that's what we know was in there. A gallon is about 160 ounces. It is 160 ounces, give or take. Minus, what they don't measure out, and then probably just a little bit extra from another gallon. These other 2 gallons we'll use later on for our mix with the Redline water wetter and the Toyota red fluid. So what we'll do is we'll close up our valve, and then we haven't started the car yet, it's still cool, and we'll put our fluid back in here, and we'll turn the car on with the heat on high for about 10 minutes or so, let it get good and warm, and we'll go from there. We use the gallon, and then we use that 32-ounce cup to kind of get close to filling it up with the distilled water. So we haven't used all that much water yet, but basically we're going to let the motor run with the heater on high. And I thought, just to make it interesting, so it's not so boring of a video, I'm looking at the little tiny temp gauge that it doesn't overheat. We'll use Tuner Studio from Omega Squirt. So right here on the top left is your coolant temp. It's about 67 degrees outside today, nice spring day. So we'll go ahead and get it started on the turbo car and watch the 76 warm up to operating temp, and then we'll drain the distilled water out, and then we'll basically go through and fill up our mix. Alright, here we go. Turning the heater on high. This take about 10 minutes or so, and after 10 minutes we'll shut the car off, let everything cool down before we drain it again and put in our final mix, and then maybe we'll turn on Tuner Studio again. As you can see, we're at 91 now, and this indicator still says nothing. This says 94 now. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes. The operating temp of the distilled water is at about 157 degrees Fahrenheit. That's with the heater turned on full blast. And as you can see, the temp gauge, it's always a little under half at its normal operating mark. So we'll go ahead and turn the heater off, and coolant starts to drop in temp. And we'll go ahead and turn the car off, and we'll let it cool down. Then we'll drain the distilled water, and then we'll refill it with our proper mix. Alright, so we're getting ready to do our mix. The total, quick math, was 176 ounces, so divided by 32, it's about 5.5 quarts total. I'm going to use the 50-50 mix like I always do. So half of that 176 is going to be distilled water, and the other half is going to be the Toyota coolant right here. And then after that, we'll add the water wetter. So 4 caps of water wetter equals an ounce, and it's about 1 ounce to every quart. So for 5.5 quarts, that'd be, let's see, 4, 8, 12, 16, 22 capfuls or so. But the quicker math would just be, that's about right. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 right there. So luckily each bottle that I use is half and half. So alright. Okay, so we've drained the initial fluid out. I just pulled the bucket, and this is the gallon and a half or so of the distilled water that I ran through, because I don't like to go on the block. My car's very low, it's hard to get to drain it at the drain plug on the block. So this is the way I do it, and it works pretty well. We've plugged up our drain. We still have our radiator cap off because we're getting ready to do our mix. And this is after the distilled water came out, you can see it still has the red tint and everything to it. So that's kind of how I flush it out. So, all right, we'll go ahead and empty this and we'll get our mix set up with our piece of tape as our guide, 50/50, and we'll pour in our new mix, and then we will also add the water wetter. All right, so we have our 88 ounces of coolant, the Toyota Red Long Life, and we have the 88 ounces of distilled water. Unfortunately, I guess you'd have to do this 2 or 3 times for it to make sense. I thought I could get away with 2 out of this deal, but I'm going to be a little shy. So the part number for this one is 00272-1LLAC. And then the distilled water is about 94 cents a gallon, but I can always use that around the house. And water wetter, not sure what the cost is on that. I bought it a couple years ago, but it's not very expensive. So we got our bucket, got my homemade funnel, and ready to put the coolant back in. I didn't clamp the lines or anything on the car because didn't need to. I've done this a couple of times, 3-4 times on the car, and I've never had any air problems or anything. I mean, I think the key is always just to keep the car jacked up when you're draining it in the front as high as you can, and or at least from the passenger side, just up in the air, and then when you fill it back up. But I'll record our warm-up temps here in a few. All right. So we're all done. The jacks have been moved out. The 50/50 mix is in with our water wetter. Basically, the coolant temp is at 154 because I ran it just a little bit before starting the video again. So we'll go ahead and fire it up. There we go. All right. About 63 degrees outside. Coolant is in the right place. At about 157. Was at 158 just a moment ago. And for this time of year, that's about where it stays at. So, thanks for watching.